I'm sorry, Jen, they've gone with someone else. That's what they said, someone else, not better, not more experienced. Not even in the room when we whiteboarded version 4 of the algorithm that landed us on that Forbes tech to watch list. No, someone else just meant not you. The CEO couldn't look me in the eye when he said it, like the lie might vaporize him on contact. My promotion to CTO was never even on the table. Not really. It was a dance. They let me believe I was leading it, and then they cut the music. So instead, they brought in Marcus. Big smile, cold handshake. Wore his vision like it was a cologne, cheap, overbearing, and guaranteed to give you a migraine. Day one, he called a meeting titled Strategic Evolution. I knew then it wasn't about progress, it was about pruning. And I was first on the list. I sat through his slide deck of buzzwords and veiled insults like a churchgoer in the front pew. Silent, smiling, dying inside. Decentralized efficiency, resource optimization, legacy personnel realignment. That last one? That was me, legacy, like a floppy disk. He never said it outright, but the message was clear. The woman who built Apex Sentry's core product had become an inconvenience. Oh, and before I forget, if you're enjoying this story, just hate Marcus already, do me a favor, tap that subscribe button and throw us a like. Seriously, 90% of folks don't subscribe even though they binge these stories on the drive home or while cooking pasta. It means a lot to the team, keeps the lights on and the revenge hot. Now, back to the slow motion train wreck that was my demotion. My name stopped appearing on high priority email threads. My dev leads got reassigned without so much as a Slack ping. Marcus started inviting himself to my project reviews like a nosy uncle with a clipboard. I once caught him scrolling LinkedIn during a sprint demo. When I paused and asked if he had any feedback, he just grinned and said, "You run a tight ship for now." For now. I'd been at Apex 6 years. That algorithm wasn't just code, it was sweat, tears, and 3 birthdays I missed while pulling 14-hour days debugging prediction drift. Before I joined, Apex Sentry was just a cloud folder and a funding round. I brought the spine. And now I was being handed my coat. It wasn't blatant at first. That's the art of modern corporate betrayal, death by 1,000 polite cuts. I wasn't excluded, I was given space to focus. I wasn't demoted, I was refocused on core competencies. And Marcus? He was just aligning leadership with market strategy. Every time I heard one of those phrases, I felt a little piece of me grind its teeth. The final straw came wrapped in a quarterly planning doc. A new project, something called Sentinel Horizon, was being launched. Same tech stack, same logic flow. Same predictive skeleton I had built from scratch, but this one was Marcus-led. He'd gutted my architecture, rebranded it, and was now parading it around like he'd carved it with his bare hands. I confronted him once. Just once. Why not just ask me to help? He laughed, and said, "You're too close to it, Jennifer. You can't scale emotion. Can't scale emotion." That night I stayed late, not to work, not to cry, but to think. I remembered something from years ago before Apex, before all of this. A document I'd had notarized. A clause buried deep in the fine print of a licensing agreement no one had bothered to read. That night, I didn't rage. I didn't vent. I just smiled, packed up my bag, and whispered to myself, "Let them dig the hole." I already owned the coffin. They moved my nameplate. That was the first real sign. Not an email, not a meeting, just a janitor awkwardly holding my placard, asking if I preferred the new quiet desk by the server room. That corner was where interns went to cry and laptops went to die. I nodded, smiled like it didn't sting, and wheeled my chair over with the grace of a woman already halfway to vengeance. Then came the team shuffle. Without warning, my 2 senior engineers, people I'd trained, people who could read my shorthand and commit messages, were reassigned to cross-functional exposure under Marcus's new pet director. No heads up, no performance reviews, just a calendar invite labeled org update. I sat in that Zoom meeting like a stranger at my own wedding. They didn't even look me in the eye. When I asked Marcus about it, he chuckled and said, "We're just democratizing innovation." Democratizing, my ass. You don't move top performers off the backbone of your flagship product unless you're trying to burn the whole skeleton and blame the ashes on someone else. I played dumb. That's what you do when you're circling the drain in corporate America. You smile, you document, and you prepare the eulogy for your position. Every Slack thread that smelled off, saved. Every odd calendar change, screenshot. Every email that hinted at strategic restructuring without ever using the word termination, forwarded to a private folder labeled insurance. Then came the compliance review out of nowhere. Legal flagged my algorithm's audit trail for inconsistencies that had never existed in 6 product cycles. I'd kept the version logs tighter than a drum. Every change, every line, every pull request was logged and cross-referenced with deployment notes. But suddenly, they were concerned about performance. Not errors, performance. The kind of fuzzy metric you can twist like a balloon animal if you want to make it bark or explode. Marcus started CCing himself on my sprint reviews. Then he stopped showing up entirely but still managed to forward my status updates to legal with little notes like concern, velocity stagnation, or request clarification on ownership of V1 logic. Not your work is subpar. No, just enough doubt to poison the well without getting his hands dirty. Meanwhile, I kept showing up. Hair done, smile on, giving clean updates, hitting deadlines, staying one polite sentence ahead of losing it. Because I knew the game. I knew that if I so much as raised my voice, I'd go from senior leader to emotional liability before lunch. The real dagger came in a confidential chat with HR. The HR rep, soft-spoken woman who looked like she hated conflict more than moldy Tupperware, asked to meet off the record. She leaned in like we were sharing secrets over wine instead of sitting in a beige conference room filled with passive-aggressive affirmation posters. I shouldn't be telling you this, she whispered. But Marcus has been positioning things, laying groundwork. Groundwork for what? She hesitated, swallowed, to move you out. For cause, if possible. There it was, the phrase, for cause. Not a layoff, not a reorg, not budget cuts. They weren't just planning to get rid of me, they were planning to bury me with paperwork that made it look like I had failed, like I deserved it. I walked out of that meeting into the parking garage and sat in my car for 20 minutes. Not crying, not shaking, just still. So still I could hear the tick of my turn signal and the faint hum of a vent I'd never noticed before. They wanted to erase me. Not just my role, but my legacy. My work, my code. The very thing that made them worth the $150 million valuation they were quietly bragging about to investors. And the worst part, it was working. Bit by bit, they were pushing me to break first. But they didn't know what I'd written before any of them ever heard the name Apex Sentry. They didn't know about Clause 3.4c. Hell, they didn't even read the onboarding packet I handed in when I joined, too busy drinking their own Kool-Aid and counting future bonuses. I didn't break, I got sharper. Every meeting I was left out of, I logged the timestamp. Every performance flag, I filed the response. Every whisper of doubt from Marcus, I stitched it into the fabric of my backup plan. This wasn't paranoia, this was preservation. And if Marcus wanted a case, I'd let him build it, brick by brick, right into a wall he wouldn't see until it collapsed on him. The meeting wasn't on my calendar. That should have told me everything. It was 9:04 a.m. on a Wednesday, and my badge didn't work on the elevator to floor 7. I had to be buzzed in by one of Marcus's assistants, new girl, fresh out of business school with motivational quotes in her email signature. "You're needed in conference room C," she said with a weird smile, like she was reading a script no one told me existed. Inside, Marcus, HR, legal, 2 laptops open, a folder already waiting in front of my chair. That folder had my name on it in thick black ink, bold, neat, and final, like a tombstone. "Jennifer," Marcus began, voice smooth like cold coffee, "this isn't easy. That's how you know they are about to kill something, when they say it's hard for them. We've reviewed the last 3 quarters of deliverables and unfortunately, given repeated performance delays, compliance flags, and internal restructuring, we have no choice but to terminate your employment, effective immediately." He didn't flinch when he said it, didn't even blink. HR pushed a pen toward me like it was loaded. "For cause," she added softly, like it'd hurt less if she whispered it. I flipped the folder open. Standard corporate jargon. Pages of legalese meant to drown you in blame until you signed just to breathe again. At the bottom, the cherry on top, a statement declaring I had failed to meet expectations and was in breach of performance metrics Marcus had helpfully redefined 2 weeks ago with no warning. No severance. No stock acceleration. No grace period. Just gone. "Will I be allowed to collect my personal items?" I asked calmly. "Yes," Marcus said. "Escort's waiting at your desk." I nodded. Took the pen. Signed my name like I was approving a receipt for fries I didn't order. The pen didn't even wobble. If they were expecting tears, protests, a fiery monologue about injustice, they were about to be real disappointed. "You'll get nothing from the $150 million," Marcus said as I stood. His smile was made of brass and ego. "Nothing," he repeated, just in case I didn't catch it the first time. I looked him dead in the eye, tilted my head like I was admiring a bug under a glass. "I understand," I said, and I meant it. I understood perfectly. My walk back to the desk was quiet. Eyes peeked over monitors, unsure whether to nod, look away, or pretend they didn't hear the whisper storm swirling around me. I just smiled, packed my things, one mug, one photo, one stress ball shaped like a brain, and slid my office keycard into the trash. As the escort led me past the product roadmap wall, I caught a glimpse of version 6 mockups, my mockups, the ones I sketched on a flight to Austin when everyone else was sleeping. They'd already slapped a new name on it, Horizon Suite. Cute. Outside, the sun was too bright. I had no job, no title, no place on the org chart. But I had something they didn't: time. Because while Marcus was busy rehearsing his "we've turned the corner" lines for the buyer pitch, I was already thinking 2 steps ahead. Already picturing the binder sitting in my fireproof cabinet. Already remembering the signature, the date, the seal, and the clause. Clause 3.4c, short, sharp, airtight. "In the event of termination for cause, full intellectual property rights shall revert to the original grantor." 6 years ago, when I joined Apex, I didn't hand them the algorithm. I licensed it. With terms, with limits, with teeth. They didn't know. They never read the grant. And now they'd triggered it themselves. I wasn't just walking away. I was letting them walk right into the furnace with their eyes wide open, holding the match. The house was dead quiet when I got home. No Slack pings, no Zoom dings, no office badge humming against a reader. just the low hum of my fridge and the soft creak of the mail slot rattling in the wind. I poured myself a glass of orange juice like it was champagne and walked straight to the back room, the one I used to call the cave when I first started building the prototype of the algorithm that made Apex worth its gold-plated investor deck. The drawer was bottom right. Behind old tax documents, warranty booklets, and a comically thick manual for a printer I'd long since thrown out. I hadn't touched it in 6 years. I slid it open like I was handling a live wire. There it was, the original license grant. Crisp, protected in a plastic sleeve, sealed and notarized on February 3rd, back when Apex was still in stealth mode, and I was just a freelancer with too many ideas and a knack for prediction models. Reading it again was like rereading a forgotten love letter, only now it felt more like a sword than a sentiment. Clause 3.4c. In the event of termination for cause, full intellectual property rights shall revert to the original grantor effective immediately upon notification of said termination. Not maybe, not subject to review, not pending arbitration. Just revert. Back then, it was a safety net. A gut instinct. I'd poured 2 years of my life into the early versions of the algorithm. I didn't want to give it away to a startup I barely trusted beyond the founders. So we drafted the license as a conditional grant. They could use it while I worked there in good faith. But if they ever turned on me, it went back in my hands, no negotiation, no warning. And Marcus had just fired me. For cause, on record, in writing. They'd pulled the pin without even knowing there was a grenade attached. I opened my laptop and started typing. Not an angry blog post. Not a LinkedIn sob story. No, an email. Subject line, reactivation inquiry, clause 3.4c. I sent it to a small law firm in Palo Alto, not one of the flashy ones with neon logos and podcast sponsors. This firm was 3 women, 1 paralegal, and a terrifying reputation for quietly tearing billion-dollar companies to shreds when it came to IP disputes. A friend of mine had once called them smiling assassins in cardigans. They replied within the hour. We reviewed the attached grant. Clause 3.4c is enforceable. Their acquisition process, if ongoing, may already be in violation depending on how the IP is represented. Shall we proceed? No drama. No, we'll need a week. Just, shall we proceed? I replied, yes. I'll begin documentation. Then I got to work. I opened a fresh spreadsheet, labeled it Timeline of Hostile Actions. I went back through emails, Slack threads, meeting invites, every team reassignment, every project delay, every performance flag Marcus had used to fabricate a case. I cross-referenced it with deployment logs and Sprint RetroS, proof that nothing had been off schedule until he started tinkering with team structures and siphoning off my engineers. I dug out calendar entries that showed when Marcus began attending meetings I'd previously led, only to hijack them and later claim lack of leadership clarity. I saved audio from a voice message he accidentally sent to the wrong group chat. Just 6 seconds. We need to get her off the books by Q3 or it looks bad to the board. I highlighted that one in yellow. Then came the legal filings. I knew lawyers sent a formal letter to Apex's general counsel, a certified notice of IP reversion under the terms of the original grant. It was short, clinical, and deadly. No one at Apex responded, not officially, but I saw the LinkedIn activity. Marcus started liking posts from recruiters. The VP of engineering posted a tone-deaf meme about unexpected challenges. My former team lead updated her title to interim platform director. And suddenly, my name was gone from the press release drafts I wasn't supposed to know about. They thought I'd vanished. But I was still there, documenting, watching, building the fuse. This wasn't a tantrum. This wasn't revenge. This was precision. The kind of quiet fury that doesn't scream in meetings or throw laptops. It files evidence. It sets legal traps. It waits for signatures and then slides the trapdoor open beneath the deal everyone's banking their bonuses on. Marcus had taken my title, but he'd also activated the one clause that made him the architect of his own downfall, and I wasn't going to stop him. I was going to let him keep walking, right into my binder. The first bug showed up 3 days after I was escorted out. Not a critical one, just a logic inconsistency in the data pipeline that fed user behavior predictions. It wouldn't crash the system, but it would throw off accuracy metrics by just enough to make executives sweat. Then came another, and another. A cascading mess of edge case failures and broken queries no one knew how to untangle because the devs who used to fix them had been reassigned by Marcus. Funny how pulling the Jenga pieces out for a promotion party always ends the same way. I watched it unfold from a distance, quietly, no gloating, just observation. Friend in QA messaged me from her personal phone. Do you know anything about this Horizon anomaly flag? I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The system was built like a cathedral, complex, beautiful, and unforgiving to anyone who thought duct tape and optimism could replace the blueprints. Without me and the team I'd nurtured, it was only a matter of time before it began to groan under its own weight. By week 2, clients were asking questions. Support tickets ballooned. Customer success kept reusing the same script. We're adjusting to new workflows. which is corporate for we fired the person who knew what she was doing and now we're eating ramen in the server room. I didn't say a word online, no tweets, no cryptic LinkedIn posts, no shadow blogging under a pseudonym, but I wasn't quiet either. I picked up my phone and called Daniel Tran. Daniel was an ex-colleague, now working at a mid-tier consultancy that handled risk assessments for major M&A deals. We hadn't talked since Apex's Series B, but when I said, hey, remember that IP clause I told you about over drinks once? His reply was a long, slow, oh, that clause. I sent him a sanitized version of the license agreement. No identifying marks. Just enough redacted to keep it technically anonymous, but detailed enough for someone familiar with Apex to connect dots if they were, say, on a call with a buyer. Which, as luck would have it, Daniel was. Deloitte had been tapped to do due diligence on Apex's IP portfolio as part of the $150M acquisition. A quiet deal, still under NDA, but nothing stays quiet when you feed it to the right mouths. A week later, I got a message. Not from Daniel, not directly. Came from a recruiter I didn't know, asking if I was open to strategic advisory roles in the AI compliance space. The timing was suspicious. The wording was curious, and the email signature, from a boutique firm that just happened to do advisory support for acquisition legal teams. Subtle, professional, just enough plausible deniability. I ignored it. Instead, I started preparing version 2 of the binder, one for external eyes only. Clean timeline. References to internal language used by Marcus and HR. Summarized risk assessments from my attorneys showing how Clause 3.4c affected asset transfer rights. Not the full bomb, just the fuse and a few sparks. It worked. By week 4, chatter increased. I heard from an old mentor that investors had started asking, "Where's Jennifer?" The CEO had no good answer. She moved on, he'd said in one meeting, before pivoting to a slide deck on Q4 projections. But people could smell the rot under the polish. You don't just move on when you're the architect of the entire product your company is selling for nine-figure sum. Meanwhile, Marcus doubled down. He posted a smiling photo with the team at an off-site retreat. Captioned it, "Futures looking bright at Apex Sentry." I saved it to a folder titled Overconfidence, Exhibit C. What Marcus didn't know, what no one in that photo knew, was that the buyer's legal team had begun asking their own questions now. Questions like, who originally created this algorithm? Is there documentation of full IP assignment? Was any portion of the core engine developed before the founder's official employment? Questions that smell like blood. They didn't have answers, because they'd never bothered to ask them when I joined. They'd seen a smart woman with a working product and thought, how lucky are we? They just assumed it was theirs. Now, with 7 figures on the table and lawyers circling like hawks, those assumptions were turning into liabilities. The kind that trigger delays, the kind that spook investors, the kind that end deals, and I didn't have to do a thing. Just sit behind the curtain, watch them squirm, and wait for the moment someone in a suit would lean forward in a room full of nervous executives and say, "Someone needs to talk to Jennifer." It started with a footnote. Page 87 of a vendor audit report. A junior due diligence intern, barely out of college, probably still figuring out how to expense lunch, flagged an anomaly in Apex's license registry. Buried deep in a quarterly compliance archive, there it was, a line item referencing algorithm license conditional use grantor, J. Fields, just one line, no expiration date, no termination form, no attached amendment. The intern, bless their thorough little heart, added a single comment. Unusual grant structure? Needs clarification on IP ownership. That comment landed on a shared doc the buyer's legal team was quietly reviewing, which, in turn, sparked a 9:43 p.m. email from a junior associate to Apex's legal counsel. Subject, urgent follow-up. Historical IP agreements origin unclear. Marcus saw the ping the next morning and dismissed it faster than a coffee stain on his button-down. Boilerplate, he said in a meeting, waving his hand like he was swatting away a fly. Jennifer signed it away years ago. HR has the papers. She's not part of the conversation anymore. Except she was, because in a house across town I was printing every clause, every email, every revision log, every meeting note, color-coded tabs, clean headers, chronological order. I wasn't just building a binder, I was building a guided missile. It had taken weeks to shape, but now it was ready. Binder V 3.0 External Deployment Edition. The first page, a notarized copy of the original grant. Second page, a dated organizational chart showing my title and scope at the time the algorithm launched. Third page, an email from Apex's co-founder thanking me for licensing your incredible engine to power our future. After that came screenshots, Slack exports, internal metrics, and a timeline so meticulously detailed it read like a crime scene reconstruction. Not angry, not accusatory, just precise. I didn't want their apology. I wanted their silence to collapse under the weight of evidence. Meanwhile, Apex was crumbling behind the glass. Devs were still fighting with buggy deployments and patching code they didn't write. Sales was dancing around roadmap questions they couldn't answer. Product managers were rewriting narratives on slide decks to mask that the new engine was just my legacy model with some lipstick and a new logo. And the buyers? The buyers had started whispering. One investor asked outright in a private strategy session, if Jennifer built the engine and she's gone, what exactly are we buying? No one had a clean answer. They tried to pull up my employment contract to show a blanket IP assignment, but there was a gap, a missing document, something legal kept insisting must exist but couldn't find in any drive, filing cabinet, or archive. That's because it didn't exist, because I never gave them full assignment, because I licensed it. Marcus tried to fix it the way men like him always do, confident emails, half-truths, and pressure. He told the board it was a minor hiccup and a formality. He told the buyers it was cleaned up years ago. He didn't know I was already talking to their lead counsel through the proper, silent channels. He didn't know that Deloitte's internal Slack had a channel now named #IP Field Day. He didn't know that 3 of the deal's biggest advocates had gone suspiciously quiet after being looped into an FYI only memo titled Licensing Irregularity Apex Core Model. By Friday, the deal room had stalled. Lawyers started coming in earlier. Execs started speaking softer. Investors stopped returning Marcus's calls with the same enthusiasm. Apex still hadn't seen the full binder, but they felt it like a storm in the distance. Pressure shifting, wind changing. The kind of quiet that makes animals freeze and humans forget why they were ever confident to begin with. At my kitchen table, I hole-punched the last page, clipped it into place, ran my finger over the spine like a pianist touching ivory. It was ready. The air tasted electric. They thought they were negotiating a sale, but what they were really doing was walking into my exhibit. The room was glass, of course it was. They always loved the glass rooms. Transparent, polished, open concept accountability with $800 chairs and a curated view of the skyline behind them. A monument to everything they think makes them invincible. It was just after 10. The buyer's team had flown in that morning, buttoned up, sleep-deprived, and escorted by Apex's chief legal counsel like visiting royalty. The board was seated, smiling like prom chaperones. Water bottles lined the table. The pens were Montblanc. The folders were crested with silver foil logos and color-coded tabs. A notary sat quietly in the corner like a polite executioner. Marcus stood at the head of the table in his fitted navy suit. Could smell the cologne from the hallway. He was on slide 6 of a 12-slide victory lap, clicker in one hand, fake humility in the other. This acquisition is not just about growth, he was saying. It's about synergy, scale, and unlocking new possibilities with the platform we've built. The man had never written a line of code. He couldn't tell a Boolean from a bagel. I pushed open the glass door. The room turned, not in panic, not in outrage, just confusion. Because I didn't belong there, not anymore. I had no badge, no title, no authority, but I had the binder. Jennifer, Marcus said, blinking, smile twitching at the edges. I don't think this is a closed session. I know, I said, walking calmly to the empty chair near the middle. I set the binder down, neat, deliberate, quiet enough to be surgical. No one stopped me, no one moved. The buyer's lead counsel gave me a slow, narrowing glance, not alarmed, curious, like a chess player watching an unexpected knight enter the board. I didn't greet anyone, didn't apologize, I simply opened the binder. The sound of its spine clicking open was louder than it should have been. Paper whispered against paper. Marcus cleared his throat, trying to take back control. As I was saying, we've positioned Apex Sentry as the market leader in predictive data solutions, and our IP portfolio is robust. And before you sign anything, I said, interrupting him without raising my voice, you should probably see this. I slid the binder forward, right down the middle of the table. No drama, no flourish, just precision. The buyer's counsel didn't reach for it immediately, but his eyes were already locked on the tab marked Clause 3.4c. Someone at the far end whispered, "What is this?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The trap was set. The oxygen had shifted, and Marcus, still standing there, clicker in hand, looked like a man suddenly realizing the stage beneath him wasn't made of wood after all. It was ice, and it was cracking. The buyer's attorney reached for the binder like it might bite. He pulled it closer, adjusted his glasses, and opened to the first page, index tab marked in clean red ink, Foundational IP Grant Agreement. He scanned it the way lawyers do when they expect to swat away a nuisance, not confront a bomb. The moment he hit line 12, his brow furrowed. 2 pages later, his lips parted just slightly. Then came the real reaction. His hand froze halfway through flipping, and his voice dropped into that stunned legal register that's halfway between panic and disbelief. Wait, is this notarized? Silence. The notary in the corner cleared her throat softly. The attorney didn't even look up, just turned the page with robotic precision until he found it. The gold seal. The signature, the date, February 3rd, 6 years prior. My name, the algorithm, and then the hammer, Clause 3.4c. In the event of termination for cause, all intellectual property rights shall revert in full to the grantor, effective immediately upon notification of said termination. He read it again, then again, out loud this time. This invalidates the IP transfer. It's not theirs to sell. A beat. Then the sound of a chair shifting as one of the board members leaned forward. What do you mean? I mean, the attorney said slowly, eyes still on the document. This clause, if legally binding and uncontested, reverts all rights to the algorithm back to Miss Fields. Not Apex, not the board, not the current leadership. But she was employed, another board member stammered. Yes, the attorney replied. And this document is dated before that employment began. This isn't a work-for-hire arrangement, it's a license. And it includes a trigger condition they just activated. All heads turned toward Marcus. His face was frozen like someone had yanked the battery from his spine. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. She signed an employee IP assignment when she onboarded. HR has it? No, I said softly. You thought I did, but I flagged it during onboarding. There's an email trail, check with Sarah in legal. I refused to duplicate the license agreement. You guys never followed up, more murmuring now. One of the investor reps whispered something to another who looked visibly pale. The woman from Deloitte, silent until now, pulled out her phone and began typing rapidly. Marcus stepped toward the binder, voice cracking. This is absurd. It's old. It's irrelevant. We've invested, the buyer's counsel cut him off. Marcus, you've built your product on an asset you don't own. You've marketed it, packaged it, and negotiated a sale based on intellectual property that legally has already reverted to someone else. That's not a paperwork issue. That's a misrepresentation. The words landed like stones. Then this is a negotiation issue, Marcus said, trying to recover, trying to charm. We can work something out, I'm sure Jennifer's willing to, I said nothing. I didn't nod. I didn't smile. I didn't blink. I just watched. Watched as the temperature in the room dropped 15 degrees. Watched as the board realized they hadn't just underestimated me, they'd underestimated the very foundation of the deal. Watched as the fantasy of a clean $150 million exit evaporated into contractual quicksand. And through it all, I stayed still. Not gloating, not smug, just present, because I wasn't there to make a scene. I was there to remind them what they'd tried to bury. Now that it was on the table, signed, sealed, and staring them in the face, there was only one question left hanging in the air, heavy and suffocating. What the hell happens now? The buyer's attorney closed the binder like it was radioactive. He looked across the table, past Marcus, past the board, past the overpriced branding on the folder in front of him, and said what everyone in the room was now too afraid to admit out loud. Can't acquire a company whose core IP is in dispute. That was it, one sentence. The oxygen left the room. No, wait, Marcus started, voice rising, hands spread like he was defusing a bomb with charisma alone. You're overreacting. This is just a documentation gap. We can clarify, we can. My lawyer stood up, calm as ever, and placed a single envelope on the table. Certified reversion notice, she said, filed this morning. Legal copy stamped by the Secretary of State. Clause 3.4c is now officially executed. She sat back down. Marcus looked like a man watching his parachute detach mid-jump. You can't, this isn't valid, this is sabotage. The buyer's counsel didn't flinch. You sold something you don't own, and that was it. The deal detonated right there in that glass box. Board members started yelling, not at me, at Marcus. Questions flew like shrapnel. Why wasn't this vetted? How did legal miss this? Did you know about this clause? One of them slammed their folder shut and stormed out without another word. Another pointed a trembling finger at Marcus and said, this is intentional misrepresentation. We are now personally liable if this isn't contained. Someone tried to call the CEO, who hadn't even shown up. Marcus was told to leave the room. Not asked, told. He looked at me as he gathered his things. I didn't smile. I didn't blink. I just tilted my head slightly as if to say, you did this to yourself. Once the door clicked shut behind him, the silence lingered. Everyone was staring at me now, some with confusion, some with panic, one or two with a flicker of admiration they'd never admit. And finally, I spoke. You didn't just fire me, I said, voice low, steady. You fired the algorithm. I stood up, gathered my binder, and walked out. I didn't run. I didn't look back because I didn't have to. 3 days later, the buyer contacted my attorney. We're still interested, their lead counsel said, but with her, not Apex, not the shell of what was left, me. The terms came quick: Chief Innovation Officer, Direct Equity, full recognition as founder of the core algorithm, independent authority over roadmap direction, no Marcus, no Apex leadership team, clean slate, real ownership. I didn't say yes right away. I made them work for it. Negotiated every clause, every dollar, every title and vesting condition. Not because I needed revenge, but because I finally understood the value of what I built. Of what I was. Marcus quietly removed. The board issued a vague statement about leadership restructuring. Internal investigations followed. His name scrubbed from the press cycle. My name front and center, not as an employee, not as a footnote, but as the architect. The platform now carried my signature. Publicly, permanently, they tried to bury me, but I was the foundation. So when the ink dried on the new contract and I finally stepped into my new office with my name on the door and my algorithm in the code, I didn't gloat. I just took a deep breath, looked out at the skyline, and thought, I didn't lose the $150 million. I just waited for it to come to me. Thanks for watching, you cubicle warriors. Hit that subscribe button. Unless you're my old boss, then you're on your own. Revenge of the coffee pot strikes again.